Hello, and welcome to the Distillery. I'm your host, Harry Lee Shanglun, and today I have special guest Leo Flander joining us. Hi, Leo. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've just noticed that I've left your website off from the test that we did,
Yeah, perfect.
which is perfect. Yeah,
Is
people
that
know as a great introduction that you are an oil painter.
yes, it's in the name. I feel like I like to keep it nice and subtle, so I put it in my URL. I wear it on my it's not like I have any issues with people like maybe not knowing I'm an oil painter. It's very subtle.
Right. It's your central aesthetic. You've become one with the oil paint at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I got really
I'll hide
proud
the
that like
URL.
oh yeah, that makes sense. I got really recently I got really proud of myself finally. Speaking of becoming one with paint, there's a couple of like the best oil paint colors, right? Like some of the oldest ones, and they're all like the most toxic, like all the lead ones. And
Oh
I
yeah.
finally, I was like really scared for a while, because I don't want to like die of lead poisoning, I guess.
It's
And I
a
finally bit the
passion for
bullet.
the arts, right? Oh,
Well,
you actually got
exactly.
like
I got some. I got some.
cadmium yellow. Do you have
Yeah,
any?
I got. It's so the one I got. So it's called like Kremitz White is the white one, lead white, and then Naples yellow is the yellow I went for. And I'm not gonna lie to you, they're pretty good. They taste fucking great.
Oh no.
No.
I mean, should we be worried about you? Do you need to
Yeah,
do anything special or an intervention or what's?
yeah. That's a good. I like that idea. It's like an artist intervention. You've been spending too long around solvents. We have to. Yeah.
It's something that as a mostly digital, I mean, I guess I recently have been doing a lot more physical work, but mostly digital artist, I don't have to worry as much, except for like Twitter searing my brain. That's the main occupational hazard.
Yeah, so it's like I guess it's like emotional damage for you rather than like the physical like yeah.
Totally. And Leo, I do have some questions. At some point, I'll get around to them.
Great.
I wanted to ask you about names, actually, because just recently you were telling me earlier, we actually had this massively good conversation this afternoon.
Yeah.
And now we're just going to try to replicate it word for word. So
You all missed out on probably some of the best conversations I've ever had. So
that is
yeah.
super sweet and very disappointing for anyone listening to this, but that's all right. Yeah, you recently discovered something about your name. Can you tell us what that was?
Sure. So like earlier today, I discovered that well, I guess so I know about my Jewish name, I guess. Like it's this weird thing where um I guess when you're sort of trying to like when you're not 100% in and surrounded by your culture, right? Like we are as immigrants, or like I'm not on the Jewish side of town, or whatever. My parents are not from Australia, so all these things meant that like I definitely was raised Jewish, but there's some bits. And so anyway, Mum was telling me this morning about like I guess she like explained to me Jewish name or like my Jewish name for the first time. So my name is Leo Abraham Flander. And during the course of the conversation, I don't know why it came up, but she was like, "Oh yeah, your Jewish name is what did I say it was? Oh, it's still new to me. I've forgotten.
Yeah,
It's
you can look it
I
up.
think
Is
it's
it Avi?
yeah. Is it Avi? It is Avi.
That's what
Or
you
is it
told me this
Ari? Oh no,
afternoon.
it's Ari. It's
Ari,
Ari.
pardon me. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So and even Ari, I sort of was familiar with but I sort of was like, this is weird. So at Hebrew school, I thought that I chose my Hebrew name, and I chose Ari or Aria because it's lion, like Leo. Then Mum tells me today that like at your bris, there's a part of it which is your name, like you get it, like it's like a naming ceremony. Like everyone has a sort
Right.
of lots of cultures
So
have naming
bris is the
ceremonies.
ceremony where the circumcision actually occurs, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So like you lose part of yourself and gain a bit. You gain a name at the
Totally,
very least.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. At least, and I gained two, I guess. So I got so Ari. So actually, my Hebrew name is Ari Avram, which is like Abraham. So, and I
Mm.
guess what one is interesting. It's like I was already toying with the idea of thinking about like recently, like thinking about my identity and how I present myself clearly as a Jewish person, and also as a painter, and like uh my last name doesn't feel very Jewish to me. There's a
Flander?
name. Yeah. Yeah. And like, I can imagine that it got anglicized when, the folks came over from the old country to America, like stuff like that
Mm.
happens. And So I was thinking about my last name, wasn't thinking a lot about my other names, and then even the idea of like Abraham is my middle name. So I think you were saying that Shenlun was your middle name, right?
Yeah,
Or
so on my birth certificate, I do have Harry and Shanglun
mm,
on the document, but Shanglun ends up being a middle name legally, even though it's actually a first name in Chinese, because there's nowhere else to put it. Like, there's not enough fields for English first name, Chinese first name, and all these other things. And I think that's interesting because then suddenly the rest of your life you're having to both rebel against forms,
mm,
where like you've got too many names to put into this these name fields, and you're also rebelling against the how people are perceiving you, and people really get confused when you're like, oh, either name will be fine, because the concept of multiplicity is not one that I think is dominant.
I do feel like even when you like, I'd love to ask you now, what was if there were some bits that led you to officially changing your name or like deciding to be more open about it. But I even remember because I knew you right before it and then you started doing it, and that feeling of like I think it was so like I guess in that situation I was a person like I was the person coming from the dominant culture. So I'm like, so my first feeling was like, just give me a name to call you, which is such a like that's such a like oppressive like I don't know, like thing to put on someone.
I think it's yeah, and it's important to note it can be oppressive structurally, but like be
Yeah,
very well meaning, right? It's not as
totally.
if
Yeah.
you were nasty to me in any way.
Yeah.
I think that the this is supposed to be an interview about you, so I don't know how I'm going to answer this question.
Just do
The
it.
thing that I was
Take
yeah,
your
cool.
time.
Using my Chinese name more regularly in Australia was definitely a kind of overt political maneuver in some ways, to try to normalize non-Anglo names and unfamiliar phonemes, and to kind of challenge people to say, you know, these names are just as Australian in some ways as others because it's my name and I'm Australian, so it should be an Australian name. And breaking down that what we consider a normal Australian name a little bit. And then the other aspect of it is, wanting to connect better with my identity as Chinese diaspora. And I like the way that you put it, which is just like, I can't remember the exact wording, but you know, it descends through generation, and now you end up with culture and bits, which is sometimes how I feel about Chinese culture, which is it's not mainland Chinese culture. It's kind of like Chinese diaspora culture, which kind of ends up being, you know, based on, but also an evolution and sometimes a snapshot of a particular moment in time where the timelines diverged, you know, and then people went off to the southeast. It's really complicated. Or even the way that I write my name, like the character Lun, I write it in Fanti, which is the old script, as opposed to Jianti, which they use in mainland China now. And so, kind of like looking at it on paper, it's almost an implicit, because the old script is still used in places like Taiwan and has been politicized. So the question of which script you use might indicate your preference or your political leanings regarding self-determination in questions. So all of this stuff is like, oh, I didn't even know any of that, right? This is just my name. This is how I've always written it growing up. This is how I learned to write the characters. And suddenly having a modern context changes my relationship with it.
It's interesting because I almost feel like, yeah, no, I love that. It's like, I feel like if, I have a lot to look forward to is what it sounds like. Because I'm just thinking about, this is the thing, we should gotta stop saying, this is what we were talking about before. Let's pretend it was real. I love hearing that from you because it makes me feel connected while we have technically different backgrounds because of the situation we're in here in Australia, we do have this like commonality between our experiences, and it's really awesome to hear. Like it's sort of like I feel like I'm gonna have a number of those challenges to look forward to as I try and be more vocal. Like even writing you my sending you my bio was the first time I ever put Jewish in it. I don't think I've ever done that before, and it really freaked me out. Like,
really,
you know,
can you tell
like
me more? Like, how did that feel?
Well, again, I don't think this is unique to like a Jewish experience, but certainly, like, it just makes me get in a cold sweat to put myself out there like that. You know, like, you know, I can feel myself just like, you know, it's not like, you know, like probably the stuff that happened to me is more like the kind of, you know, microaggression styles, like things. There's like constant and weird and stuff like I haven't been like nobody's put like a yellow star on me or like that's not the bit that happened to me. Sorry, I don't. I know.
Yeah, no,
I'm
no.
sorry, but
I know what you mean though.
It's a weird feeling because it's like because I know that is not happened to me, but we still carry it and I don't know. So I guess and honestly, it's like it's not like kind of mystical intergenerational trauma kind of thing, but it's just like you grow up with that stuff around you, like and so I think it's like you said, and this is why I want to do it, is this feeling of like, well, for me, I think it's almost like making space for myself and my culture in the place that I live now. Is like that's sort of how I feel about like, not like, and hopefully for others who have a similar experience to me. So yeah, it feels weird to put Jewish in there, but I'm gonna try, and I might try. I don't know if am I gonna change my last name? Is that technically harder? Maybe I should start with my first name or just, as like an artist thing, I could just do like Ari Avram, which would be cool. And then I'm like, do I do it in Hebrew? And then even what you're saying about the different characters, even that's the same because like there's the Hebrew language as spoken in Israel, which is a modern language, and there's a bunch of political stuff around. Do you use, like, my mom grew up speaking Yiddish, which uses Hebrew characters but different sounds sometimes, and then like how did you learn the prayers, and like how should I write my name? Should I write it in English? Should I write it in Yiddish, which you can also use like Roman characters? Or anyway, like yeah. Anyway, I got that. I'm going to be calling you a lot for some tips.
Not that I have any expertise in this, but certainly I think you're right in articulating the shared experience of having to assert your identity as a point of difference in Australia, which kind of papers over that. And it is a scary thing, and it's, I think, a worthwhile thing because, as you point out, it both carves space for yourself as to be constructed by others, and it gives you an agency over how you are seen, which conveniently, I think, links to your craft as an oil painter. You're somebody who's, and specifically, you do portraits, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell me more about how
Sure.
you relate your craft to this idea of how we see ourselves, or how we are seen, or how we construct image?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like it's almost like I mean, even more specific, and maybe this like leads into it. Even more specifically, like not only would I say that like you said, I'm a painter, I'm a portrait artist. I even like don't really respond to painting people I don't know. It's like the thing that I like doing is painting. Yeah, it's this weird. No, it's not weird. It's just I'm really interested in like. It's like using. I don't want to get too highfalutin art language yet. Like let's like ramp up into it.
We'll
but
ease into it. Yeah,
that's right. You don't want to jump straight in. But it's like I guess yeah. Because it's like portrait and like oil portrait is like that's the ideal of a way of seeing yourself and being seen and communicating to others about like what that means. There's a big like history about it, and a lot of it's about elitism and stuff like
right.
that.
So yeah, like what makes it ideal? Is it just its aesthetic of this is something that belongs in a gallery and therefore has greater authenticity?
Oh,
Or is there something else that you're pointing to when you say that it's ideal?
Oh, no, I guess I mean more like the platonic ideal in the sense that
Okay.
like so it's not. Like what I mean. Yeah, we've gone straight up into.
Yeah, sorry. That was my fault.
Good. No, I like that. So I guess I mean it's ideal. Okay, so in terms of ideals, in terms of positives, I think what's nice about it is it's the simplicity of it. It's very clear what you're communicating because it's like you often, at least the ones I do, realistic or representative, we should say, not realistic, because that's a whole different thing. That's a whole different Distillery episode. Representative of a person in like the way that they look. And so in that sense, I guess it's ideal because it's simpler. Like movies can be portraits of people, but there's a lot more going on. And anyway, so, but I was just thinking in terms of almost
the thing that you're articulating, it sounds like, is that the way that oil painting as a medium allows for portraiture as the process, or as the process and results, is quite one-to-one.
Yeah.
in terms of how we imagine, the construction of identity into image.
Mm.
Whereas you might have a more abstract time of like creating an interpretive dance that represents somebody, because then you have to
Totally.
translate the thing. It's just like, oh, we're just going to take the visual components and represent it in oil paints. And
Yeah.
is that what you
And
mean?
I think so. And so it's like, and it's not to say that it's better. We're very familiar with it. I think there's, because like the interpretive dance thing, like, uh, not to do any specifics, but like there's lots of cultures where that work makes way more sense and people are accustomed to it. So I guess it's part of it is like here in this tradition, like in the West over the last 500 years, a certain style of representational art has taken a place in our culture. Like there was even a thing in terms of the wankitude of like it's like the Royal Academy of Art is English, or maybe it was a French tradition, but they just like ranked the best like which is the best art form, and like
Oh, did
one.
they?
Yeah, right, because it's like if you're a painter painting in portraits, that's number one. If you're a painter painting in landscapes, that's number two. If you're a painter painting in landscape in like what's called genre painting, which is sort of like the ones that were like some Greek myth, or like
Yeah.
like Zeus or so, that's number three. And then like further down is like still lifes and stuff. So it's not like an accident that that's the place it's taken in our society, but it does have that right now. And I think so, to answer a question that you had at some point, it was, so it's like you take and so I think because of all that stuff, everyone's really familiar with it. So I like that bit that it sort of makes it's almost like, I like the bit that it's very accessible, because like you said, it's one-to-one. People are really familiar with it. People see him. And sort of like, if I say to you oil portrait and you imagine an oil portrait, you're probably going to imagine something that looks pretty much like the work I do, as opposed to like people don't go to, I don't know, cubism or something usually. So
Yeah, right.
and so it's sort of like I guess my thing is I want to take that common language, that sort of easily accessible language, and then use it to create a subversive message, which is like, I invented a term. I don't want to take credit for it, but it's just I just haven't heard it and nobody knows what it means. So like, it's not
I
a
think
great
that
term
means
that I
you
invented.
can.
I call my portraits collaborative portraits, in the
Oh, but
sense
you're
that
not literally working on the painting with somebody else, as in
exactly
putting
I'm
paint to
not.
canvas.
I'm not, but I think what I really aim and strive to do, and like why it's this like thing about how people see themselves, and like it's like everything you see in a painting that I do is led by the person in it.
Mm.
With like a few, like it just like, obviously there's a couple of like aesthetic considerations and stuff like that, but like it just in terms of like, what are they wearing, what are they doing, who are they with, like all that stuff. And so in that sense, it's collaborative. Like I really want them to feel like they're in control of their image, which is a really important part of like the sort of process I'm doing, because it's like often I like to make people, similarly to the work we're doing with our names, or what you do with your name, what I'm about to do, jumping off. I should change it right now. Just do all right. Is creating space for other kinds of stories and other kinds of representations of people in a space that's like that really like gallery style space or whatever. I've lost the
Right.
train
So
of thought.
no, that's okay. Let me try to draw out some of the things that you were saying. And I guess for context, right, Leo, you're often painting like people from marginalized communities who have a story that you're trying to refer to or express or tell, and who, at least in the work that you've done in the past year series, like they have a real strong sense of who they are, and you're trying to like capture some of that self.
Actually, I don't want to correct. I don't like the word capture. I don't know
Oh,
why.
yeah, please.
Yeah, because it's like capture is very much I'm the subject, they're the object. Capture,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Whereas, so I don't know. There's no better way. Like I convey is often what I end up saying.
Convey.
It's a
Well,
bit
actually, yeah.
weak, but like it's a weak sauce compared to capture. But like,
We'll workshop it. That's all right.
like yeah.
But that's a really great point, actually. There's something I hadn't even thought about, like the way that it reframes that almost like aggressive act of capturing an object. So, okay, you're elevating and conveying aspects of the subjects, and the other part of it I think that's really fascinating is you work in creative economies and gift economies more so than like selling your work. So you're often, or I think mainly, creating this work almost just as a gift for the people that you're painting.
Yeah, it's like a gift exchange is my favorite one. It's funny because it like started really practically. Like it was just like this thing that was I finished art school or like illustration, and I knew I wanted to paint, I knew I wanted to paint portraits, and I was like, okay, how do I get to my 10,000 hours? Or like, oh, I think the number I'd read, you know, it's like a like the number doesn't really matter. It's just like a thing
Sure.
to aim towards.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was I don't know. I read Picasso made a lot of work. He made like 3,500 works, or 35,000 works, and it's like I don't even like Picasso, by the way. I've mentioned him twice now. He's a dick.
Did you say I met him twice now?
No, mentioned him twice. I don't even like him, but the number, it was just like he made 300
Yeah.
paintings, or
Okay,
800
sure, yeah.
paintings, or something like that. Or 1,800. So I was like, cool. I want to get good. I want to be proficient. I really like doing it. I just have to do a lot of portraits. That was like the first puzzle piece, and then so I was like, great. I'll just start painting people that I know, and then which is probably pretty common. And then I didn't want to include money more, almost because like, hey, Shenlun, do you want a painting? And you're like, how much will it be? And I'm like, if I say anything other than free, suddenly it's a different kind of conversation. And the point at that point was just for me to make paintings. That was the only goal, was I just want to paint portraits. So I just started doing this thing for free, and I was working with people who had businesses, and just like it's nice for the painting to kind of be used somewhere. Was a kind of fun bit to it. Like, oh, it's in my shop, or you know, whatever. And then after a while, the next part of the puzzle, I think, is all the bits that lead to this quite intense process I do now, I guess. It's like, so I was doing this sort of gift economy thing, and it was nice. Like people would like give me some service exchange of services, but like I think the nice thing, I think the thing that I love about gift economies, if you want to start one at home, kids, gift economies. I think when things are transactional, is like a transaction is sort of like me and you know what's happening up front. That's what makes it a transaction. You get this service, I get that service, or whatever, money, and then and you either feel good or bad at the end, right? You either feel like it was a fair exchange, but there's something really like powerful, I feel like, and like that I like really respond to in a gift exchange, which like functionally could be the same in terms of like goods transferred, right? Even because sometimes people give me money, right? But conceptually, it's really different. And I think it's almost like practically, it's like the first step is I give you a gift. And that is 100% about that feeling and like the thing I want to share with you and like make the art with you. And hopefully we have some feelings together. And then that's it. And then in response, if you want, you can give me a gift and that tries to reflect some of the feelings that you have or whatever the reason you give a gift. Or like some gift economy, you actually would pass it on, I guess. But like a gift has to be, I read a whole book about gift economies. Gifts have to be passed on. So like I give you the gift, you give the gift to someone else or back to me or whatever. But they're like separate and it doesn't feel like it's not, it has a different feeling to it, a transaction. It's really...
So reflecting, this is no longer the act of distilling, but this is just fun.
Yeah.
You know, compared to a transaction economy where you're trying to determine the value of the goods and services and create a, I guess like fair exchange is not necessary. Actually, it's an exchange that fits both people's fuzzy idea of what the value is, and if there is an overlap in terms of what like is possible in terms of value evaluation, then there's a possible trade. And if there's no overlap, then it's not possible to trade because it's like, well, there's nothing of like you'd have to add more money or you'd have to change the service or whatever. And I think someone that reframed this to me really fascinatingly. They said it's actually much more polite to negotiate for everything. And it's a nice thing to do to negotiate because what it does is gives the other person more confidence that they got the value that they didn't overpay. It gives them the confidence that they have actually received value equal to what they paid when you negotiate. If you don't negotiate, you're always feeling like, oh, maybe I overcharged, or sorry, maybe I undercharged, or maybe I overpaid. But if you negotiate, you actually like give everyone the same security. And I think it's
cool.
really yeah,
That's
like,
really
it
cool.
kind of reframes negotiating in my mind. And so the other aspect to transaction economies is it's very much about like perceptions of value and labor. And that doesn't disappear when you enter a gift economy. I think it sounds like what you're saying is you're just putting the focus differently. It's more like you are now given the opportunity to express your respect for the value and labor in a different way.
Yeah,
That's
and
not.
I think
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess like there was some again sort of almost functional stuff where it's like it's almost I hope that this I like in the same way that like the again, I'm not saying that portraits are ideal, but there's some nice like stuff to it. And so one of the things about it is like, how do you express the value of a portrait? Like, do you express my like the hours I spent, which I do have a spreadsheet to like keep track of it. But even if you do that, like that's only hours worked, and then it's like and like yeah, like people in service businesses do this kind of stuff, but like I think for some there was just something about oil painting, like making someone an oil portrait that just fundamentally broke for me. Like I couldn't charge my hourly rate, right? Because there's no way that's gonna be it was like, well, if I charge someone I don't know, $30 an hour or something. The only people who can afford it are like people that I don't want to be like classless.
Right, because like an oil painting ends up being thousands and thousands of dollars, right?
You know, and that's often it's an oil painting that's already done. That's the cheap side, and then it's like, well, it's $10,000 or $20,000 if you want something like commissioned or about you, and none of that really interested me. Yeah. So why? So for me, it was almost like the gift gave me a way out. It was like I just don't have to value this. There's no value that will make sense to anyone in this situation. Like, and like I talked to some of the people who I've painted, they can't put a value on it. Like, you know, like, and I mean that makes me cry. Like that's the best. Like, but there's just so I was like, nah, I'm out. I'm out, everyone.
I think that's really a gorgeous explanation for, in late capitalism, we quantify everything, and it's about getting it down to the numbers and being able to match things up. But as we've explored in other episodes of the Distillery, I'm thinking, for example, about a conversation with Ida Kubashevsky that I had about like ecosystem services. You can't the true value of a thing is not always expressible or reducible to the number. And that's a good thing. So I like your gift economy sidestepping that problem and allowing us to. I mean, again, just like a weird pull because it's not exactly the one-to-oneness is. But I think more broadly thinking about how we evaluate culture. The other one to watch is Claudia Riseborough explaining why GDP is messed up. Cool. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, great.
I love that this conversation has gone totally differently to how we planned it in the afternoon, by the way.
I know. Yeah. I think it's good. I think it keeps the viewers like they get something fresh and new. Like otherwise we'd just be, I'm a terrible actor, so I couldn't pretend that I was doing something the first time.
As a final question, I wanted to hark back to a thing that you said, which is about kind of like, how do audiences engage with the work? And this idea that you posited that like an oil painting is accessible in the sense that if you imagine what an oil painting looks like, you're probably imagining something close to what you are presenting. And it's actually quite like people understand why it's beautiful. People have a very good gut instinct of what makes it compelling or good or bad. Whereas you can compare that to contemporary art, modern art, that's a little bit further away from that and suffers from this problem of people saying, oh, I could have done that. Oil painting, by contrast, and the Stuckists would love this, right? Like the skill involved is kind of self-evident and it demands attention. So I guess to close us, I wondered whether you had any thought about the function of painting as a mode of engagement, and this is such a horrible question, of art in different contexts, like in a gallery versus giving it as a gift and all that sort of jazz.
I think that I think people that's okay. I think people like this is the thing about that I could do it I could have done that. I think people like watching, like being able to see stuff that like you can see the not even skill evident, but the work evident. Like it is compelling, and I had this. Okay, I made this graph. I don't think this is going to be useful or true at all, but I had this weird idea that there was something about there would be some sort of relationship between effort in, and you could quantify that as hours, like hours worked, just for lack of a better word, effort in versus like time engagement. So like the examples of stuff like a photo takes a minute to do, and maybe you look at it for a second on Instagram, right? And I'm not trying to be like a judgment, right? It's not even a judgment. It's just like there's some maybe then you take the same photographer takes an hour or a year to like, I don't know, like some what's her name, A Livovitz or something, like, you know, like an art photographer, right? You can get more into that. And I just noticed that like I'm really there's a lot to unpack in a painting, because you can look at all of the brush marks. You like can see the work that's put in it. It gives you more to maybe connect with as like another, I don't know. I'm not sure.
To be fair, it was a crap question on my part. I was just
did you want me to say anything about how I think it's the artist's job to help people connect with art? Because I do think
that is the conversation I was alluding to, and I couldn't.
Okay. Okay. Pretend he said a better question, and I was like, oh yeah. So I believe that, and maybe it's not just me as an individual, but I think part of my practice is this idea of helping people engage with art, because, I think the problem with contemporary art is almost not the art itself. It's just like people go in and feel like idiots. Like the museums, I mean, and museums are getting better, like I guess because of the pressure of trying to get people in. They try and do different things that get people engaged, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's like, here's a selfie wall. Anyway, like, so I guess I'm taking that on the mantle, and like I just think about it in like holistically, and I'm really passionate about like, how do I I paint a painting, and then I've started doing full feature documentaries about the process, which gives people all these ways in to start thinking about the painting. And I tried to do like a web experience, and I'm doing live shows and just different ways of like, it's like we're talking about on-ramp before. It's like, that's what I really feel like I like to give people, is like a gentle on-ramp. It's almost like a gentle on-ramp to engaging with art. And you can start with mine because it's it's like what's the thing that isn't a gateway drug? What's the nicer way of saying that?
Hors d'oeuvre.
Yeah, nice. It's like, right, it's easy, it's hors d'oeuvre, everyone likes it, and then you can take that away and hopefully get to use some of those engagement with like the next bit of art that you see.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I'm also just like overwhelmingly pleased with my brain for coming up with that. I'm just like never gonna say gateway drug. I'm just gonna say hors d'oeuvre now.
Hors d'oeuvre, yeah, it's really good.
Hey, we've run out of time. Leo, thank you so much for coming and chatting about all these things.
Totally my pleasure.
We didn't talk about any of the dot points that I wrote down, but that's all right. And you should, talking to the audience now, check out Leo's work at his website, which I flashed at the start, oilportraits.org. Yes. And you too can be gently onboarded in a delicious way to the rest of visual art.
Yeah, no pressure.
Cool. Cool. Thanks, Leo.
Thank you.
Oh, this is a fun episode. I think I learned a few things. I learned that I probably shouldn't just like have episodes before they happen, or if I do, I should record them. And then the second thing I learned is that all my guests are super generous and fantastic at carrying conversation, even when they go completely off the rails. So thanks, Leo, and thanks everyone who's ever been on this show. This show, wow, getting fancy. Hey, you can check out our previous episodes on our website, distillery.site, and also follow on Instagram at distillery.site and Twitter at distillery site. New episodes every day. Take care, everyone.